Hi, I'm Dr. Jane Marie Mackenzie and I'm a suicidologist at the University of Westminster, and I am part of the Cherish support team. And we have been asked by lots of you during our feedback sessions to provide a blog on what's the difference between suicide and self-harm. So this is kind of a common question that I get asked in my profession anyway. So I thought I'd do a really quick video blog to explain the differences. So this is quite a difficult topic to kind of understand because there's a lot of kind of terminology that's used. So you might hear the term self-harm, you might hear non-suicidal self-injury, you might hear self-injury, suicide attempt, suicide. So there's lots, there's lots of terms that are used. So really what we're thinking about when we think about self-harm, and the kind of key differences really are that self-harm, there are typically what we would call kind of an underlying function. That might be like a way of coping with intense emotional feelings, intense emotional pain. And typically we refer to it as a coping mechanism, a maladaptive coping mechanism. And what that means is, again, typically there wouldn't be suicidal intent. Okay, so that's really what it's about. It's about intention. What is the underlying intention for the person? And then when we think about suicide, again, just using the word typically here because it wouldn't always be the case, we would think about a person who perhaps does have the intention to die. Okay, so there's two different intentions there. However, it's also really important to point out that when we think about suicide and self-harm, they can be linked. A person that carries out self-harm can be at greater risk of suicide. Okay, and also it's important to think about, when we think about suicide, some people, when they feel suicidal, they don't always, if they enact suicidal behaviours, they don't always say that they definitely want to die. Sometimes you'll see people say, well, actually, I kind of left it up to fate. I didn't really care if I lived or died. So there's kind of, it's a bit tricky when we do start thinking about intention. But if you are trying to kind of distinguish when you're talking to perhaps a person about this and they are telling you that they've self-harmed, when you're trying to distinguish between kind of, is that suicidal behavior or is it self-harming behavior, it's really about exploring like the reasons behind it, like what is the function, what is the purpose. And I'm going to use the word typically again, but typically we would expect to see somebody that self-harms to use that behavior as a way to kind of cope with their feelings. I mean, there's lots of stuff on our website anyway where you can have you can explore and you can see kind of what those functions are and why people self-harm. But when we're thinking about suicide, that's normally, it can be around the wanting to escape, wanting to die, wanting to end your own life. So hopefully that kind of gives you an understanding between the two behaviors. But remember, they can go hand in hand. So we do see people that self-harm and maybe feel suicidal at points and attempt suicide. So they're not kind of, they are distinct behaviours, but I wouldn't treat them as kind of one sort of more serious or less serious than the other. They can go hand in hand. But also, it's very important to point out that with self-harm, for some people, self-harm can actually be kind of like protective against suicide. So they will actually tell you that if somebody tried to make them stop self-harming, that could escalate into suicidal behaviour. So, one thing we wouldn't say is if you find out somebody is self-harming to just suddenly tell them to stop. It doesn't work like that, and they need lots of support around them. So a really good way of kind of getting to talk to someone is just exploring, if you're in a position where that person feels comfortable to talk to you, and you can provide that support, is to just explore what that feeling is and why they maybe are doing that behavior without judgment. It's not good to judge a person, but just allow them to have that space to talk about, well, why, what's the underlying reasoning behind their behavior. Okay, hopefully that was helpful. It was a little bit of a kind of pit stop tour, but yeah, you wanted that blog, so I thought I would do that one for you. So thank you.